I've got this theory. A lot of people want simple right now. Whether it's the state of the world right now, the access to information, or the shifting interests of both aging and emerging gamers, simple has seen a rise. Now, this isn't just a feeling by any means. In fact, there's a lot we can point to in the market for this being an emerging trend. Recently, I looked at the changing games landscape and why AAA titles just aren't really good anymore. So maybe this is a response to just that, and players are looking elsewhere to find interesting games. But what we are seeing is that players are really drawn to games that take a tried and true idea and execute it in an ultra simple format. Like, just look at these numbers for games on Steam alone. Vampire Survivors has made $40 million in the last 13 months since it launched. Brotato, $5.5 million in 4 months. 20 Minutes Till Dawn, $4 million in 8 months. Soulstone Survivors, $4 million in 3 months. Shotgun King, 1.3 in 9 months. Stacklands, 4 in 10 months. Inside the Backrooms, 5.5 in 7 months. And Your Only Move is Hustle, 500,000 in just 2 weeks. And I could go on, but the point is we're seeing massive numbers from micro, ultra simple, replayable titles. So what makes these simple games? Well, I'd categorize them as the following. They have a low barrier to entry. Within moments of booting up the game, you're playing. The core game's mechanics are simple and quickly understood, so you don't spend your time bogged down in tutorials. This low barrier to entry also extends to the price point. Rarely are these games above $5 or $10. They have a low cognitive load, so the input and dexterity asked by these games is incredibly light, limiting the players to 2 to 3 actions at most that they have to keep track of. For example, moving a character and using an ability. These games have little content but are endlessly replayable. These games are clever about the content they build. They're designed to be as small as possible, but as repeatable as possible. We've seen this mostly with titles leveraging the evergreen roguelike genre, but others have started to tap into leaderboard chasing and user-generated content to achieve this too. High APM, or actions per minute. What I mean by this is that the player is never taken out of gameplay moments. You're kept in the action and kept always doing something, but without ever deviating from that goal of keeping it a light cognitive load. And finally, these games have high randomness. Simple games leverage randomness in a way that feels good. It's random moments of delight and random rewards that constantly fire off with particles and sounds. When coupled with the high APM these games end up feeling like highly effective little dopamine machines. So, we've defined it. But why have these games become popular? And who are they for? I've spoken about this before, and I'll speak about it again and again, but the rise of the free-to-play market has been a great boon for the games market. It's brought in new types of players, and the platforms these games live on have forced new innovation. And from this innovation has been a reintroduction of ultra-simple arcade-style games in the form of hyper-casual games. Hyper-casual games are everywhere today. They're free to play, small download size, and have the most ridiculous ad campaigns to bring in new players. But the entire identity of these games are built around the grabbiness and replayability of their one core gameplay action. Sound familiar? These are bite-sized games that lean on tight gameplay loops, strong replayability, lots of actions per minute, and high reward. This is the foundation of the simple game we've seen explode today. So, the popularity of simple games has been on the rise in recent years, thanks in part to the widespread adoption of smartphones and new audiences and game genres that came with it. But hyper-casual has taught us one other thing. For these games to be successful, they need to be in a huge amount of players' hands to compensate for their razor-thin margins. These need to be games that could appeal to as wide a player type range as possible. And the simple video games we're looking at today do exactly the same. They can be enjoyed by players of all ages and skill levels, making them appealing to a wide range of players. Which, historically, this is bad, right? Because if you make something for everyone, you make it for no one. But somehow simple games transcend this, and I think this might have something to do with the unfortunate passing of time. Games are at that point where they're not really a new industry anymore. We're seeing people that started playing games in their youth now being in their 40s and 50s and everything in between. So how do you keep players engaged with long-form, high barrier to entry titles when you're competing for attention from an audience that is starved for time, and in some cases the dexterity they were once blessed with? Then we have the other end of the spectrum. We have emerging gamers who have grown up in a world of games that are designed specifically to maximize your attention and engagement. On top of that, this demographic has grown up with platforms like TikTok. This is a player type that has a really low tolerance for low dopamine content. Media for them needs to hook them quickly, as there are options aplenty, and needs to stay at a high pace or at least keep anything happening frequently. Simple games are specifically designed to be played in short bursts, making them perfect for people with busy schedules and also for those with limited attention spans. These games manage to settle in a neat midpoint that balances what two polar opposite player types are looking for. What else is there? Well, one of the key features of these games is replayability, as players can keep coming back to them for new challenges and experiences all the time. One thing that gives these games the edge over the bigger players is, ironically, that they're small. With these games being so simple and so small, it enables developers to be more mobile with their content strategies and regularly create new content post-release of the game. This organically creates a really healthy live service model for these titles. Players are rewarded for returning to the game with new patches typically occurring at least once a week. Because these games are so small and often run by teams of 1, 2, or 3 devs, they just have so much mobility to make changes, decisions, and updates quickly. And what's more, these games are great deals for consumers. They're cheap, they're replayable, and they're small enough that you can form good player-dev relations. So what do we know now? Simple games are low cognition, high action, high reward endorphin fountains that give players of all ages an easy access escape. But where to from here? Well, I think like any emerging genre, we will see and have already seen a fair share of clones of successful titles. But more than that, we will see a maturation of the genre. We know the core is rock solid and has found an audience consistently. So what does the next step look like? How do you introduce other elements to this genre without breaking its secret sauce? What does true multiplayer look like for this? How about a meaningful story layer? What happens when you lean fully into user-generated content? Or how about the inevitable dating sim spin on this genre? Interesting times are on the horizon for these consumer-friendly bundles of fun. And I know I'll be putting my money where my mouth is and dipping my toes in the simple games development lagoon and seeing what comes of it.